now you can say it's the current set, the current block, the last block, and the summer set.
Right.
And that answer is always true.
Yes.
Okay.
So we've actually got a backup match for you guys. Rudy Briksza with Esper Deathblade versus Theo Jung with Goblins. Another very popular deck in Legacy. But I don't think... Yeah, okay, we've got them switched. That makes a lot more sense.
Yes, the Goblins player is not the one with the Geist of St. Traft in play.
Yeah.
It's the one with the Ether Vial.
So we've got Rudy on the left and Theo on the right. Goblins, yeah, another very popular deck in Legacy. It had a point in early 2011 when it was probably the best deck in Legacy, or at least it was winning opens left and right in very early 2011 and probably, I believe, late 2010, but it's fallen off since then.
Well,
it still shows up, still a good deck.
Well, Goblins has this really interesting spot in the metagame where if it's playing against a deck that's fair, Goblins is actually one of the best fair decks because it generates so much card advantage in Goblin Ringleader and really is able to capitalize on that card advantage due to cards like Aether Vial.
Right, mana advantage.
Right, where Goblins will be bad is if you have a combo-heavy metagame. Goblins is one of, as compared to creature decks like Esper Deathblade that have counter spells and hand disruption, Goblins is pretty cold with something like Ad Nauseam Tendrils.
So Rudy with his Nightcrawler Angel token there, which that's from the Marvel card Series 2 from 1991 as it gets brushed aside for the real Angel token. I complimented Rudy on those tokens earlier today. I actually collected all those cards back in 1991.
Oh, wow.
I had the whole set. I remember I was the first card collecting thing that I ever got into, which of course ended up being a precursor to Magic a few years later. So we've got...
So the interesting thing about this, I want to talk a little bit about Rudy's Esper Deathblade list. Interestingly enough, he has a fair number of Geist of St. Trafts in the main, which is, I would say, not the standard. He's playing Geist instead of Dark Confidant right now. He actually has 3 in the main deck.
Yeah, and he was talking about this. He just, we were talking about it a little while ago. He's playing 3, as you mentioned. He just feels like the card can just take over a game. If you can't deal with it, and I described it this way. It's kind of like a mini Aetherling, right? But it's a little easier to deal with if you can put something in front of it.
You can block this,
right? But it's half the mana, and you don't have to.
And it hits just about as hard,
right? And the removal still doesn't hit it. Yeah, and it does hit just about as hard. So it is, in a way. A mini Aetherling. It can take over the game. This just in.
Yeah, one thing you may notice, we obviously haven't seen pictures of the players, but you may have noticed by looking at their hands of playing. Interesting story, Theo Jung is younger than the deck. He's almost as young as the deck he's playing with.
Yeah, he's 13. This is his first Open, so welcome to the StarCityGames.com Open Series, Theo. Those Rishadan ports are older than him, I believe. Right, 1999?
Yeah, I believe Mercadian Masks
Masks
released in 1999.
Yes.
So yeah, some of these cards here printed some of the cards he's playing with older than he is right now.
Yeah, that's something. So, Goblin Matron there on the board alongside that Aether Vial. Goblins is a popular deck for people just breaking into Legacy too. I've noticed that.
Well, I think what I really like about Goblins in Legacy is that it's powerful. It's good enough to play. It's not a bad deck. Two, for people who are just getting into Legacy, a lot of Legacy decks don't work like normal decks. Goblins actually does in the sense that you're playing creatures and you're attacking with creatures. You're going to win by attacking with creatures. And what I like, but beyond that, it's not an easy deck either. I mean, it's easy enough, but there's a lot of skill in it. You see even pro players like Cedric Phillips still pilot Goblins and talk about how many decisions there are in the deck.
I believe that was a Tuk Scrapper that was flashed in there off of the Aether Vial to triple block the Geist of St. Traft, but Rudy able to replace it with another copy, and I believe that was enough, Theo, with not enough answers to that Geist.
Yeah, well, between a Flying Angel token and a Creeping Tar Pit, those are two cards that Goblins has a lot of trouble dealing with. Goblins obviously have a lot of creatures, but Goblins don't really fly, and they don't block unblockable things.
So, yeah, Creeping Tar Pit, he can deal with it through that Rishadan port.
Right, so the port, yeah, he does play ports and wastelands, so that's going to help there. The Geist, it's really hard for him though not to take 4 off of a Geist of St. Traft.
Yeah.